going on, guys? Brent31, appreciate you guys tuning in. So in this video, I want to take a few minutes just to talk about operating as an individual infantryman in a cold, wet environment, all right? Now, what do I mean by cold, wet environment? Well, it's really cold and it gets wet. Cold, wet environments are probably one of the most dangerous environments to operate in, all right? It has its own unique set of principles, SOPs, TTPs that, are probably different than what you're used to. Just one example of that, if you're a young Marine or young Army soldier, you've probably always heard, hey, make sure your weapon is within arm's reach of you at all times, okay? Golden rule, never break it. You would think that that was applicable to every situation, right? Wrong. You talk about operating in a cold weather environment where we have things like heated tents in our bivouac sites for life support systems. Hey, you cannot keep taking your weapon and your optics and things like that in and out of that hooch over and over and over. It's going to cause problems with your weapon. It might cause problems with your optics, your laser aiming devices, things of that nature. Okay, the constant drastic differences between going inside of that heated tent and coming back out into the elements really jacks with that type of equipment. So in these type of environments, these cold weather operation environments, you tend to build a rifle rack outside of the hooch, and then your weapon and gear gets staged out there, right? And then you throw a tarp on it, do what you got to do, but the weapon itself stays outside in that cold weather environment. So that's one example, guys, that I want to bring up that is vastly different than what you're probably used to in operating at something out of like a patrol base, okay? So I'm just going to hit the wave tops, guys. This video would be hours and hours long if we were going to try to talk about every little minute thing pertaining to operating in cold weather environments. Can't do that, right? I've done a pretty in-depth video on some of the gear and equipment and uniform items that you would take up to, the Winter Forge training. You guys can check that out. You can also check out the training videos I've done over going to Winter Forge the last few years. Those are fantastic. And then I've done numerous videos over snow camouflage and different patterns and all kinds of shit like that, and operating in those type of environments where snow camouflage is applicable, right? So I just want to hit the wave tops. I know most people today have short attention spans, and I want to keep this video as short as possible, so I just want to bring up a few things that are just been, that are absolute musts and are lessons learned for me and other people going to training events in these type of environments. So first and foremost, guys, heat management with your own body is probably one of the most important things to take in consideration when operating in a cold weather environment. What do I mean by that? You use a layer system, okay? You just don't throw on a pair of camis and go out in an environment like this where it's down in the teens or below zero and operate. You're just not gonna survive, okay? We've all heard the phrase, hey, pack light, freeze at night. You can't do that in these type of environments. You do that, you die. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. These environments don't fuck around. You cannot pack light and freeze at night in this type of environment. You have to bring the gear, the proper gear, in order to survive, in order to operate in these types of conditions, right? This environment will kill you before the enemy ever gets a chance to, 100%. So heat management is one of the most important things that we need to talk about as an individual infantryman, okay? So it's a layering system. So when we move from one point to another, all right, let's say we're making a movement from our infill to where we're going to establish, let's say, either a patrol base or a bivouac. We tend to establish bivouacs in cold weather environments because bivouacs consist of, things like heated tents. So you're taking like stoves and fucking, those portable heaters, and you're really establishing that bivouac to establish life support systems to keep guys warm inside those tents when they're not out on the lines manning positions or LPOPs or things like that. So when we're making those movements, we want to strip down those layers to the lowest possible layer. So let's just talk about the layers real quick. Now, the U.S. Army and Marine Corps have like a level system. Okay, level 1 all the way up to like 7, and they have different layers of clothing for those levels. I'm not going to talk about that. It's very complicated, overcomplicated in my opinion. Okay, just going to break it down Barney style. Okay, start with a base layer. A base layer is a moisture wicking layer. So that's what's touching your skin. So a top, moisture wicking bottom, and a moisture wicking top. That's your base layer. That's your number 1 layer. what that's doing is when you're moving, you're sweating, right? Sweat doesn't stop in the cold weather environment, guys. You will sweat, 100%. That base layer is going to pull that sweat and push it out, okay? Next layer is probably going to be like a waffle layer. So you guys can get them on eBay or surplus stores. There's plenty of them out there, and they generally are pretty good prices. But the waffle layer will go on top of that. All right. Above that is going to be your Gore-Tex layer. Now, I'm telling you guys, Gore-Tex is absolutely essential in my opinion. I've been in cold wet environments, and if I didn't have Gore-Tex on, I don't know if I would have made it. All right, because if your shit gets wet from the environment, guys, you're done. The Gore-Tex does wonders from breaking the wind, keeping the wet and the moisture from the environment off you. Okay, so I'm absolutely a fan of the Gore-Tex layer. When the temperatures really drop, guys, and you're stationary, you can throw on the, I believe it's a level 7. The Army calls it the puffy suit. The Marine Corps calls it, the Army calls it the marshmallow suit. The Marine Corps calls it a happy suit. And that's that puffy level 7 jacket, all right? And there's a top and there's a bottom. The Marine Corps also has some booties that can go over your feet. But those are the kind of things that you would put on to plus up when you're stationary. You do not want to be moving in that stuff. When you start moving, guys, you want to take those layers off. You want to step off with the lowest amount of stuff on. And generally what that is for me, when I go and I'm stepping off for something, is I will take off that waffle layer and I will wear the Gore-Tex and that base layer. So that moisture wicking base layer and just my Gore-Tex top and bottom is what I'm wearing to step off to make a movement or go on a patrol or whatever the case may be. Because once I stop, if you take a halt or you get back to the rear, you want warm items to put on. Okay, so you can throw that waffle top back on, that waffle layer. You can throw, you know, I generally, when I'm stationary, guys, underneath my waffle top, I will have my Marine Corps issue service sweater. It's 100% wool. The new ones I think are a synthetic wool blend, but this is a wool sweater, service sweater, and it's just fantastic. So I generally put that wool sweater on top of my base layer, waffle top over that, and then I can throw my Gore-Tex top on top of that, all right? And if I'm gonna be stationary for a long time and the temperatures are pretty low, I can throw that freaking happy jacket and trousers on over that. Boots. So for the last few years at the Winter Force training event, I've rocked these U.S. Army, I believe they're called intermediate cold weather combat boots, and these are fantastic. They're a little bit bigger. They are a Gore-Tex boot because operating in these types of environments, your boots do get wet. Okay, so I absolutely recommend Gore-Tex boots, guys. I've seen guys shit on Gore-Tex boots too, talking about sweat can't escape. Change your freaking socks. All right, it's just like operating in any other environment. You make movements, your feet get wet, you change your damn socks. All right. If it's really cold environments, the Mickey Mouse boots, you know, you'd throw those on in a stationary position to, you know, provide that warmth, or even the happy boots. These intermediate cold weather combat boots also have some inserts for them. So, and that's another thing I should have talked about, socks. I wear the 100% wool Arctic combat socks. They're real cheap, and I'm telling you guys, those are just absolutely fantastic. There we go. So these boots are a little oversized, and the reason for that is they can facilitate these things. So you take your wool sock, you stick it inside this bootie, right? And then this goes inside your boot, and it pluses up your boot and it makes it super warm. And you know, probably not as warm as, let's say, a Mickey Mouse boot would be, but if you're in a cold, wet environment, this is sufficient. This is absolutely sufficient. This is what I've used over the years, and my feet have been absolutely just fine. All right, but that's the kind of stuff that you would do to plus up in a static position. I would not want to step off on a movement wearing these little booties in my boots. All right, so if you're gonna step off, you would take that shit off, put your boot back on with just your regular 100% wool winter sock, and then step off. And that way, when you come to a stop, you can plus back up if you need to. All right. Some guys double up on socks. Hey, you got to do you. Not everybody's the same. Some people need extra warming layers than others. All right. It's just everybody's different. You know, you got to figure that out for yourself, what you need. But management for your heat of your body is 100% essential. So let's talk about our head and our face. So as you guys can see, I just got a regular, watch cap. What I do is when I go up to those type of environments, I'll use a ski mask. I got two different patterns here. One of them is like your typical burglar style ski mask, right? You guys can see how it's designed. The other one only has an eye opening. I will tell you from my experience, guys, being in a cold weather environment, this one tends to be warmer for me, but there is a problem. When you breathe out, it's going to collect all up here where your mouth is, okay? And then that's going to freeze. So all that moisture is going to collect up on the actual ski mask itself, and it's going to freeze on your mouth, okay? This is still 100% wool, okay? Wool retains your heat even when wet, so it's going to keep you warm, but those are your options. If you don't want to have that problem, look at something like this, but then again, your mouth is exposed, all right? So it's a give and take. What do you prefer? What would you rather have? Gloves, what covers are your hands? So one thing about cold weather operations when it comes to gloves, you have to take extra. I can't stress that enough, guys. Winter Forge, the last Winter Forge Evolution I went on, I had probably 4 different pairs of gloves. 2 of these green wool liners, all right, glove liners. And then I'd had these type of gloves, as well as these right here. These look like black leather work gloves, but these are actually leather with Gore-Tex lined cold weather combat gloves. These are just an older generation, and these are fantastic. I used the crap out of these specifically when we first occupied our bivouac site and we were doing a lot of work. These absolutely got soaked to the bone, guys, with water. They were frozen. Okay, that's how much water I got on them. And when I was done doing my work, I took these off. I put a different pair of gloves on, and these literally hardened because there was so much water from all the pine boughs and the branches and pines and stuff, and that we were cutting down and doing all that work, and all the snow getting on me, that I had to take these off and have to put them in some sort of heated area to dry them out. Because that's how cold these were. Okay, so you absolutely got to take multiple sets of gloves. I tend to take 2 pairs of gloves, those 2 you see right there, and then a couple of these glove liners. All right, because again, these will get wet also. You also want to consider when you're stationary, trigger finger mittens. So you guys, what do I mean by that? There's a little cutout here for your finger to go into, so that you can manipulate a trigger. USGI style weapons have a retractable trigger guard. So you can push that in with the end of a round, a bullet, and pull that trigger guard down to accommodate that winter mitten. Wire mitten's good because with your fingers all closed together like that, it traps that heat better. And if you're in those really cold temperatures, guys, I'm telling you, mittens are freaking money. So I tell you, I go heavy on the gloves, guys. You need to, particularly in a cold weather environment. That's just been my experience. All right. There's other things like a wool scarf, neck gaiters, things like that. Also, to help keep this upper area warm. Those are all things that you put on when you stop and you come to a stationary position so that you can plus up, okay? Again, heat management, guys. Just remember the golden rule. You step off, you strip layers, you stop, you add layers. It's just a constant game of doing that. So also remember security, right? You get somewhere, you're gonna be in a position for an extended period of time, you want to plus up layers. Hey, some other guy holds security while you put your layers on, or you do security while he puts his layers on. Once he's done, then the other guy does it, all right? So just heat management, probably the biggest takeaway that I can give you guys today in this video. Some other things. water obviously is just as important. Now, this is very important. You guys got to pay attention, not just to yourself, but the guys around you. In cold weather environments, dudes tend to not want to drink water. They get this feeling that they're not thirsty and they don't want to drink. I'm telling you guys, you have to force yourself to drink water, right? It's no different than being in any other environment. You don't drink enough water, you're going to dehydrate. So you have to drink water. Being in a cold, wet environment, hey, now we got to battle a different beast, right? Our water, keeping it from freezing, okay? So during the day, as long as you have your water in a decent pouch, it tends not to be an issue, because during the day the temperatures tend to rise, okay, and you're constantly drinking from it and stuff like that. From my experiences, at night, obviously when the temperatures drop is when we really got to implement some practices to keep our water from freezing on us. Your water freezes in a canteen, you're fucked, okay? So a couple things to consider. If you're using regular standard issue GI canteens, the plastic ones, one thing you can do at night, just turn it upside down. What's going to happen is the bottom of the canteen is going to freeze first and make its way down. So when you wake up in the morning, your top portion of your canteen that you turned upside down is going to be frozen, but once you go to turn it right side up and drink from it, you can still drink and have access to that water, okay? Another thing to consider, this is not a U.S. issue canteen, this is a French issue canteen, but a wide mouth canteen. That way, if you do have ice that formed around the top of this, you can take your knife or bayonet, whatever you got, and chip it away to break that open so that you can get there to that canteen. What else? Hey, having a canteen that's metal and not plastic. You know, sometimes as a U.S. military, you don't have that option, or any military for that matter. You're given whatever, you know, you're issued, but if you have the opportunity to have a metal canteen vice a plastic one for cold weather operations, that's better. Why? Because you can put that sucker, if you have a fire going, you have one of those individual infantryman, like an SBET stove or that BCB Fire Dragon, you can put those canteens on top of that. It'll heat up your canteen. Or if your canteen is frozen, right, that's the way you unfreeze it, is to put it over that flame, okay? So metal canteens are absolutely preferable in those cold weather environments. Let's see, I'm just digging through my pack here, guys. See if I have anything else I need to bring up. So those have been kind of my lessons learned over the years. Those are the big takeaways, right? Obviously, there's a whole lot more, guys, and I don't want this video to be hours long, all right? But those are just a few things to take into consideration. There's a whole bunch of stuff that will come up that you just wouldn't expect. My boots, being in a cold, wet environment, my boots got soaked, and then night fell. I took my boots off and I set them next to my sleeping system inside a Willie Peter bag, and then when I woke up in the morning, my freaking boots were frozen in a manner that I could not get my foot into them. All right, I had to literally just force and ram my foot into this boot, and it was so deformed. And then I had to keep my boots next to a fire that we were running at one of the Winter Forge training events to try to get them pliable. So, you know, take that in consideration. You might want to keep your boots like inside your bivy sack next to your sleeping bag, so that they, you know, don't freeze at night. All right, so those are some of the things you might want to think about. So I enjoy operating in the cold weather environments, guys. It's a different beast. It's absolutely a different beast, and it brings out some of the best in guys, and also brings out some of the worst in guys. Okay, so some weapons considerations. So I already talked about, you know, keeping the weapon out in the elements as opposed to taking it into a heated tent repeatedly could cause some issues. If you have a PEC laser device, you know, the lens covers on these PECs, a lot of times they break off. One of the experiences I've had, lessons learned, is I went to Winter Forge and I did not have the lens covers on my PEC because they had broken off, and my PEC absolutely froze, guys, because water had gotten on the outside of the lens and it froze, and that PEC was absolutely useless. Could not use it for nighttime operations. Pretty much had to rely on passive aiming with my MVGs, and hey, there might be a situation where your optic gets ice on the lens on that, all right? And you can't use your optic. So make sure you have backup iron sights for your weapon for those cold weather environments. That's my 2 cents and lesson learned pertaining to the weapon itself operating in that environment. Let's see, what else I got here? So there's again, guys, we could talk for hours, but those are kind of the big main wave tops that I want you guys to take away for food for thought and considerations. I highly recommend that you do go out and train in a cold weather environment. It doesn't have to be snow. It can be like it is right now. It's in the teens right now as I'm sitting here. There's some snow on the ground, guys, but for the most part, there's not snow, but it's freaking balls cold, and all those principles that I talked about, you'd absolutely employ in this type of environment. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I highly recommend that you check out my Winter Forge coverage videos, as well as some of the Winter Forge preparation videos I've done. I've also done several videos on snow camouflage and different snow camouflage patterns. And you know, this is that time of the year, guys. If you're watching this in the winter, you know, take these principles, run with them, and train for the fight. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a comment.